and welcome to the first episode of the 4 Point Play podcast, where a bunch of high schoolers jump on Zoom and talk about basketball for 30 minutes. I'm Naylin, a Trailblazers fan.
I'm Kushaal, a Warriors fan.
I'm Ishan, and I'm a Houston Rockets fan.
And I'm Rohan, and I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan.
Yeah, so today we're going to be discussing power rankings, and by that we mean who's going to be the best team going into the playoffs. That's the assumption that Kawhi and Klay are back. And after that, we'll be discussing some awards. So Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, Rookie of the Year, some players that we think will explode, MIP, and Sixth Man of the Year. So let's start with some rankings. So the first two teams I have on my list are the Lakers and the Clippers. I think coming playoff time, when Kawhi is healthy, I think those two teams are at the top of my list. Do we have any disagreements there?
No. I say the Lakers are first on my list as well. But I do not think they're going to finish first at the end of the season because, they have a whole new team. They have to make a bunch of adjustments. Westbrook on the Rockets, that took a while to, calibrate. So probably a similar situation for the Lakers, to be honest. Plus LeBron, AD, load management. Westbrook also load management. So,
I agree. Westbrook has the same trajectory every season. Like, he starts with a new team. He's not playing very good. Everybody says he's overrated, and then suddenly he explodes. He starts averaging a triple-double again, and then everybody's like, oh, now he's underrated. But I just think come playoff time, the Lakers are the strongest team. All the veterans they got for basically the minimum should have been illegal. But I have them first as well. But I have the Warriors second too.
Yeah, I have the Lakers and Clips first two as well. But I feel like maybe the Warriors could be better than the Clippers.
Yeah.
Clippers always seem to disappoint us, so I wouldn't be surprised.
That's true.
And the Warriors are just so potent offensively. I think people have really forgotten just how explosive and how hot Klay can be. And so, I think that's a very valuable contribution.
So I think we're all assuming that that Kawhi will be back to his level. And I think he did play through his initial injury that he got in the playoffs. So I think we all can agree that he probably will bounce back to that high level. It's just depends on when he actually recovers. But in terms of the Lakers fit, I know there's a lot of talk about how Westbrook doesn't necessarily fit with that team when you've got a playmaker like LeBron and you're just adding Westbrook. How do you guys feel about that fit? Do you think it's going to work out, or do you think that's enough star power to just propel them through the playoffs?
Westbrook has never been the third option. Will he be? Will AD be the third option here, or will Westbrook be the third option?
I think Westbrook's
the third option.
Yeah. So I honestly don't know if he accepts his role as the third option. Things might go well.
I think Westbrook might be reaching that phase in his career. Obviously, he's always been ultra competitive. He's one of those players you would attribute that dog mentality to. But I just think that at this stage of his career, he's probably just willing to maybe take a lesser role for a championship, but I think we really just have to see how it goes down.
But I don't think he has the ability in his arsenal to take a lesser role, on a team like the Lakers.
I can shoot, he's like one of those players who has to be active with the ball.
Him and Harden,
the way I view it is that when you have a lineup where this is the assumption that I think that Ariza is starting. When you have a lineup where LeBron's your best shooter, that's not a good idea, right?
Yeah.
But the way I view it, I was initially, this is kind of how I related. I was initially against the Harden to the Nets trade. I know a lot of people were talking about how it's not a good fit, but I think I've come to the realization that if there's a team that could get stars together that don't necessarily have that right fit, it's LeBron. And I think that star power is enough to comfortably put the Lakers as the first seed. And I usually rate the Lakers pretty high. And I think they do have shooting off their bench with Monk and Nunn. I think those are really great additions. And I think that star power is enough. So I think the Lakers are a good pick for the first one. But with the second seed, we have with the second power ranking coming into the playoffs, we have some debate. So some of you are slightly higher on the Warriors than the Clippers. Kushaal, you want to talk about that as a Warriors fan?
Okay, so I have the Clippers as a second, but that was kind of an impromptu decision because we kind of changed our power rankings right before this. So thinking about it, the Clippers do tend to disappoint in the playoffs, but they have Kawhi. So I don't know if I can put them ahead of the Warriors. I guess we'll have to see how the Warriors solve their problems from last year. Right. So this year they won't be running a 7-man team anymore for a majority of the season, but that still doesn't change how they go into the playoffs probably. Um, I don't know. I feel like the Clippers just are. Kawhi is just too good in the playoffs for me to put the Warriors above them in the power rankings over there. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I mean, I said the Warriors, and as a Mavs fan, I think I've seen how potent Kawhi is in the playoffs, up close and personal. And I think that he's one of the best playoff performers of all time. I don't think that's up for debate. In 2019, he had one of the best playoff runs of all time. But I think my thing with the Warriors, I just think that they added depth that some people aren't really considering. Like, I think a shooter like Bielitsa coming off the bench, and I really think that the Warriors got to steal with Otto Porter Jr. And I'm also a big fan of Andrew Wiggins. I know a lot of people think he's a bust, but I think that he can be a versatile defender, and he's a decent enough shooter to be on the Warriors roster. And so I just think that offensively, they're incredibly gifted, and I just think that can carry them to the conference finals. I don't think they'll make the finals. I think the Lakers will make the finals, but I think that they're definitely a threat. Yeah. And then I have the third. I think that's not up for debate. I have the Clippers right after the Warriors. It's very close, but I'm just edging with the Warriors.
Yeah, and I also feel like, Curry's got Clay back, assuming Clay comes back. And that's like last season, we really saw Curry like single-handedly carry the offense, right?
Yeah.
And having Clay back means like a lot of more, off-ball movement. And that's where Curry's like elite, right? He's probably the best player in that. And I feel like it truly, brings back Warriors' potential to become like one of the best offensive teams. So
yeah,
absolutely. I think I can understand the Warriors being third, but I'm not as high as you guys were, just because I feel as though there's slightly underestimating the impact of 2 season-ending injuries. And I think offensively, Clay probably has the chance of getting back to his offensive potential. But I think the defense is definitely going to take a hit. Clay's known as an elite on-ball defender. There's no doubt that he's not going to be up to that level again. Offensively, I hope he can, but I think with 2 injuries and not being played, like at this point, he's coming back in December, January, and with the heavy minutes restriction, I'm unsure. I know he doesn't necessarily depend a lot on athleticism, but I still have a lot of question marks with how much offensive carry load can come. That being said, I still think the Warriors can. I still think they can be the third power seed going into the playoffs. I still think they have that upset potential. I'm a huge fan of Draymond, but I'm also looking at their other pieces. I think someone that you really need to look closely at is the development of Jordan Poole. I think he's a really important part of this Warriors team. I have him actually really high on my 6th man of the year ranking. I think that if he can really take that next stride, it's going to be huge for the Warriors. And another thing about that, we're going to have to see Draymond, how he progresses offensively. He took a huge hit offensively with his scoring potential last season. We saw his famous miss on that Grizzlies game. And defensively, he's still elite. We all know that. But it's a question about, is he going to regress even more on the offensive end? But with the return of Clay, if he can hold up to his offensive potential, then I think the Warriors might be in a decent shape. I think they should have probably tried to explore some trading options with their rookies. I think they did. I don't know how the market was going for that, but I still think they still have a couple holes on their roster, and hopefully that can be fixed deadline wise. I think the Warriors would be a team to watch out for at the deadline, making trades. I think that's one of the teams, along with the Trailblazers. Actually, I think the Warriors and Trailblazers would be teams to watch making trades at the deadline to try and improve that roster going into the playoffs. So yeah.
Okay, so I think we can.
You could argue the same thing with Kawhi, right? You said how Clay's coming back from a season-ending injury.
Yeah.
So Kawhi. So
I think the difference is
Draymond potential offense thing. Scoring isn't even his objective. Like
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't really see where you're coming from, but yeah.
The thing is that I had with Draymond last year is that he isn't necessarily meant for scoring at all. But when you had a team that had lack of scoring last year, he needed to step up, and he's not at the potential that he was before, where he could knock down threes even if he was forced to.
Okay, but now he doesn't need to score.
Yeah, now he doesn't necessarily need to score if Clay comes back to that offensive threshold, which I still think has a couple question marks at. I know everyone's excited to have Clay back. I am too, after like 2.5 years of not watching him. I think he's going to be great. His defensively, he's going to take a hit for sure, but I just hope that he offensively he can come back to that same mark.
So what parts of his offense do you think will take a hit because of the injury?
So I think navigating through screens, his agility, his quickness in that sense, not necessarily like I think that's kind of an underestimated part of his game that requires at least a good amount of athleticism. And I don't necessarily think that he's not going to reach that mark. I just have question marks where I can't comfortably put them as a
speed
really
then.
high seed. Yeah, speed, his agility, his ability to get through screens, his off-ball athleticism is where I think it's going to take the main hits. I think his shooting could probably come back to his mark. But yeah, I just have question marks there. Not necessarily don't think he could reach that. I just have question marks there.
Yeah, okay. I don't really think his speed's going to take that big of a hit through his injury. And even if it does, I feel like he can still maneuver through screens well enough. I don't think speed is a main part of his offense, you know.
Yeah.
It's drawing defenders away from Curry. It's just catch and shoot, you know. So I feel like he can return to offensive. I feel like I'm not too questionable. I don't think it's too questionable to say that he's going to return to his offensive.
Yeah, I agree with Kushaal on this. And I feel like because you don't have Clay for the speed, you have him for the shooting. And having him just in the team increases spacing so much that, you know, that's going to itself just be a massive thing. So I don't think even if he loses speed, I don't think it's gonna make much difference to their offense.
To me, I'm just kind of hesitant to rank a player really high coming back from 2 season-ending injuries. I know you said Kawhi, but I think I believe Kawhi kind of played through his initial injury, which led to the tear. I have more faith in Kawhi returning to form than I do with Clay. That being said, I do think he has that. I think. I would bet on Clay coming back to his offensive mark, but I still have question marks to say. That's where I think I'm going to go with. But before this conversation escalates, who do you have after the Warriors?
Yeah, wait. So I think we're under the assumption that all three of us have Lakers, Warriors, and Clippers top 3.
Yeah, I think we do. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's move on to 4. Could I start us off? I have the Denver Nuggets. I'm pretty high on the Nuggets, and I'm a firm believer, along with Naylin, that the Suns had a very fraudulent path to the NBA Finals. And I think even though the Suns swept the Nuggets, that series would look a lot different with Jamal Murray. I think people may have inflated his impact a little bit because of his, absolutely incredible run in the 2020 playoffs in the bubble. But while I'm not entirely sure someone could sustain that level of play again, I think he's certainly someone who could average 25 points a game in the playoffs. And just giving Jokic that other reliable second option, I think in the playoffs, MPJ and to an extent Aaron Gordon didn't really live up to, the offensive potential that I believe they both have. And I think Jamal Murray is such a lethal shooter. And obviously he's not on Clay's level, but I think he's also someone who, when they get hot, it's incredibly difficult to stop him. In the playoffs, if you watch in the Clippers series last year, he was just chucking up shots and they were just going in. And so I think he's definitely someone who makes a big difference. And does anybody have anybody else at number 4?
I also have the Nuggets.
So I think the big thing with the Nuggets here is just seeing MPJ's development. I used to dislike MPJ a lot. But seeing his development is going to be key with Jamal Murray out. I think even in terms of fantasy, he's a good pickup in early rounds because he is a lethal shooter. One thing I want to watch with MPJ is what else can he provide? I know defensively he's been really poor, someone who is like 6'11". I think he's 6'11", right? He's really big. He should be able to take more responsibilities defensively. That's something I want to watch, because I remember his the first season he ever actually played after his back injury, he was getting benched a lot because of how bad he was defensively. And I really want to see that progression. I think he definitely has some strides, but he does get lost. And I think that's the big thing for him is his defensive progression. And what else can he add offensively besides his lethal shooting? So that's one thing I want to watch with MPJ. That being said, the Nuggets, I'm not too sure about. I have the Suns as well on that same tier. I know CP3 is aging, and I know I'm not necessarily that huge on Booker as I haven't been huge on Booker before, but I do think that the Suns team is really good, and they do have that experience going in, and I think that they can match up well against the Nuggets and maybe even be better than them.
I like the pickup of JaVale McGee too, and I think that not going to make them. He's not going to propel them to the level of the.
So, Naylin, where do you have the Nuggets?
I have the Nuggets. I think I would put the Suns over the Nuggets and put the Nuggets after that. Yeah.
So you have the Nuggets 5th?
I have the Suns 5th. Yeah.
Okay. I have the Suns 5th.
And the Nuggets 4th?
Yeah, I have the Nuggets 4th, Suns 5th, Jazz 6th.
So I think my thing with the Suns is just seeing the progression of Ayton and Booker. That's going to be the huge one. I'm a really big fan of Ayton. I think that he's a perfect big. He can also come on the perimeter and defend, and I love bigs that can go on the perimeter and defend. It's like one of my favorite things. So I think he's going to be the key person to watch. Defensively, he's amazing, and I think CP3 has really elevated his game, even though it's not necessarily stat-wise. So I think Booker and him are going to be players to watch. They lost Torrey Craig, which I think was really unfortunate. I really like Torrey Craig, and the Pacers got him for super cheap. So his loss is going to be huge. But seeing the progression of Bridges and the other really nice role players they have, and the addition of McGee is going to be really nice for that Suns team. And I think I can put them fourth coming into the playoffs. It's a question of CP3's health, I guess. Yeah.
I think the Suns could get a pretty high seed in terms of the regular season. But in the playoffs, I don't know if they have the star power. They have Book, they have CP3. CP3's old now, but also CP3's game probably not too much impacted by age. But yeah, they have Ayton. But I still think CP3 is gonna take a step down, and then the younger guys are gonna take a step up. But I think what got them to the finals last year was CP3's impact, right? So I don't know. I feel like they're gonna finish high, but I don't see them going that far. I feel like they're a second round exit, just because the younger guys are gonna take a step up, and yeah, they do have experience, but they don't have experience in a bigger role. I know it's more gradual, but I just feel like they need a season or two to be like a top tier playoff team in terms of with CP3 aging.
So I think one thing to look at is that when CP3 went down with this whole COVID fiasco, is that Booker and the rest of the team were trying to hold their own, and I think that can sustain even when CP3 takes a hit. It's just a question of how much of a hit that CP3 takes with his age. That's the big question, is CP3's ability to really propel himself in the playoffs. But yeah, just with the experience, I think I can personally put the Suns fourth and the Nuggets fifth. Yeah.
Yeah, well, mine is the same as Kushaal. I have Nuggets at fourth and Suns at fifth. And honestly, I think Murray's just incredible. Because I think he was top 5. I think he was top 5 in distance travel, and with Jokic in the post, his off-ball movement provides so much spacing for MPJ as well. And yeah, I just feel like Nuggets, I feel like they have more depth than the Suns. So I think overall they're the better team.
Yeah.
All right. And then after that, I'm going to come with my controversial takes. I know already you guys had said the Jazz, but I have, and I'm going to get hate on this, but I do have the Blazers as the next team in the playoffs, which I know I'm going to get a lot of scrutiny for, but I think it's either the Blazers or the Mavs. I think those two watch. I think the Jazz are below that. But yeah, my gut is telling me to go with the Blazers, and I do have that justification in mind. But I want to hear what you guys have on that position before you.
Wait, no. You go first.
You want me to go first on why I think the Blazers are there?
Yeah.
All right. So, well, seeing all the rumors that Dame's leaving and all that, and but if you asked me like a year and a half ago, is Dame leaving the Blazers? I would have said no. But at this point, I think my answer would change to I don't know, which is kind of scary because I don't know if Dame's actually going to retire with the Blazers. And I think this season is going to be really, really important. So Dame had come out during his Olympic press conference and said that looking at this team, I don't think it's a championship team. And the Blazers didn't really introduce anyone of like star power per se on that team. Now reports are coming out that they try to get Ben Simmons, which I don't really like Ben Simmons that much on the Blazers, but at least they tried to trade CJ. But apparently Morey only wants Dame in a Simmons trade and holds Simmons to an extreme value. And I'm comfortable with keeping CJ in that case. So they definitely try to explore CJ, but I guess they're not getting the value that they want, and they're going to try and ship him to the deadline. But as of now, their roster looks like Dame, CJ, Norman Powell, Covington, and Nurkic. And they have a new coach who I think is going to be huge. I know you guys think that the hiring of Chauncey won't necessarily transform the team. And maybe I am slightly overrating Chauncey's impact, but I think what I've seen from Chauncey is that I think Nurkic is going to have a really, really, really good year. I think he's one of my wild cards for most improved. I think Norman Powell, when we got Norman Powell at the trade deadline, our team was really good. I think we were ranked first on overall net team rating. And I think that's gonna transfer to next year. I think that the addition of Norman Powell, though he's not a traditional three, I still think his value with shooting, and he does have a pretty big wingspan that's similar to threes, which I think he's manageable at three in that case. But I think that team is good enough to get to 6, and I think their new philosophies with Chauncey, running Dame more off ball in kind of like a Steph Curry type style, hopefully using CJ more as a playmaker and utilizing Nurkic's playmaking as someone who can facilitate off ball movement. I think that's enough to propel them comfortably in the playoffs. I mean, Blazers are usually known to choke in the playoffs, right? They're a great regular season team. They always have it. They got beat by the Nuggets. They should have never got beat by the Nuggets, and they could have put up a somewhat decent fight against the Suns. They wouldn't have won, but maybe taking a game or two with I think a more competent coach would have happened. And we got rid of Melo and Kanter. Those are some other things that happened. And I think defensively we were better with the removal of Kanter and Melo. And for me, it's the big thing about Chauncey's impact. And I think that I can get them where they are. I think they're 6th, right? Right, 6th, 5th.
Okay,
6th.
wait. So what makes you think Chauncey's impact will be like that much? Like, how do you know he'll make those changes or make those changes effectively?
Well, we don't know what any changes that a coach will make, right? The finalists for the Blazers was Mike D'Antoni, Becky Hammon, and Chauncey Billups. And it's been said that O'Shea wanted Chauncey all along. And out of the 3 candidates, I actually believe that Chauncey was the best. Now, the thing is with having a lot of Blazers fans did want Mike D'Antoni. And if they ran a kind of hardened, like Rockets type style basketball, I really think that would have resulted in perhaps a higher seeding and maybe even a Dame MVP with the amount of usage he would have got. But I really doubt that they would be going deep into the playoffs. I think with Chauncey, his mentality is off-ball movement and utilizing Nurkic's playmaking skill and basically off-ball movement. Ball movement is his big thing. What the Blazers have originally done is basically have Dame and CJ carry. It's having them hit tough shots. And I think moving from that mentality into more off-ball movement, assists, like the Blazers were last in assists, right? If he can bring that up, we have elite playmakers and we can use CJ better as a playmaker. We have that. I think that's enough to make them a better team. We definitely have work on the roster, not as talented as I want to be. But I think Chauncey's emphasis on both the defensive end and introducing new philosophies offensively is the reason why I have them 6th.
I actually have the Mavs 6th. I know that you guys have the Jazz, but I'm just not a believer in the Jazz. I'm not a fan of Rudy Gobert. I think that he's the worst defender to ever win Defensive Player of the Year. and he's won 3 of them. When he's on the perimeter, he's lost. There's really nothing he can do. I'm a big believer in Donovan Mitchell, though. I think that he's on the cusp of being a superstar. I was a huge fan of Clarkson, but he was really disappointing in the playoffs. Both series, he had ample time to fix his game, but there were just some holes that weren't, filled. And so because of that, I have the Mavs over the Jazz, and then I have the Blazers 8th. I think Naylin should be grateful that I have the Blazers 8th. I think they're in a really tough position and going ahead. Naylin thinks, I know that you think that you'll get a pretty good enough package for Dame, but it's not like the Blazers have a great history of making the right choices with their picks. So, and the reason I have the Mavs is because I just think that I don't think people really understand, even though it's a small sample size, just how incredible Luka has been in the playoffs. And, obviously you can make the argument that maybe Kawhi and Paul George should have spent more time on him defensively in the playoffs, and I would agree with that. But even in the time that Paul George was on him, the only player that really made his game drop a little bit was Kawhi. And even then, Luka was still putting up pretty good numbers on decent enough shooting to get by in the playoffs. And I just think that Luka is phenomenal. I think Tim Hardaway will have another great year. I think his confidence has soared, and I definitely believe in him as what apparently looks like the team's second option right now. I've had a lot of faith in Porzingis, and it's not really done well for me, but I've decided that as a fan, I'm just going to give him another chance this season. And I do think he'll have a bigger role in the Mavs offense. He was really just a prop in the playoffs. So I think that the criticism he gets, while it's valid, it's not essentially his fault. I think that Carlisle's system was just Luka. I mean, Luka's usage rate in the playoffs was 40.1, which is by far the highest in NBA history. And without him, I think through the series, they were a minus 55. And so that's something that has to be fixed. I'm a little sketchy about Jason Kidd, especially with everything that's come out in Giannis's new biography about his coaching method and the whole Christmas Eve story. But I think that he'll get other players more involved, and I think that's definitely something that Luka needs. And I have them 6th over the Jazz and the Blazers.
So do both of you have the Jazz on that 6th spot?
Yeah, I just feel like the Jazz, they're very well balanced, and especially their bench, like with Rudy Gay, Bogdanovic, and Joe Ingles, as well as Clarkson. You have contenders for like 4 6-man of the years. I said maybe not this season, but in the past they have, and I just feel like that's gonna add so much to the bench. And I just think they're better than Portland and Dallas overall.
Yeah, I just think they're more established. They may have not. That first seed may have been a bit hollow last year, but I still think they're just very well rounded. They're kind of like the Nuggets in that way. They have cohesion, and there is no. I mean, I could see the Blazers doing better than them, but that's also a big if because it's Chauncey, a new coach. He hasn't proved his worth, but the Jazz have. They are a very established team, and I just put them there as a safe option. I do think they could fall a bit down, but I still think it's not safe to say yet that the Blazers would do better than them in the playoffs, just because we haven't seen how they would do with what's his name, Billups, and then also probably the same for the Mavs. We haven't seen how they're going to do with Kidd, so I just think it's just a question of how things play out. So right now, I'd say just because the Jazz are like a more established team, and they've proven their worth, they would be the 6th best for me, and that's probably still a little low in terms of the general NBA fandom's placing of them. But yeah, I'd say they just have that cohesion, So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And after that, I've kind of leaned towards the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves in that tier. I think the Timberwolves would be an interesting team to watch. But yeah, so I think the Grizzlies, They still haven't made that push that I would like them to see. Like I think their drafting has been really good, and overall they're just a solid team around. But I don't think they have enough to really get them deeper into the playoffs. They've been in kind of that play-in area for the past 2 years, and I think it's going to continue. But that team that I think that's on the rise is actually the Timberwolves, a team that I was not big on at all last year, even when they got D'Lo. I think a lot of people have said that they've written off D'Lo. I still think he has a bit of that potential in him. I think he's got riddled with injuries. I think the introduction of a new head coach and Chris Finch would be a really good starting point for them. And I think that's the team that I really want to watch in the West. There's one team I could pick, would be the Timberwolves. So that's why I have them slightly higher.
Yeah, I have the T-Wolves right under the Blazers at 9th. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel like if everything clips, I mean, not clips, if everything clicks, I think they could do really well. I mean, they have a really, really talented roster. Like, they have Cat, they have Ant, they have D'Lo. That's like, that itself is like a really, like, individually, if we just talk individually, Cat is like a top-tier center on his own. D'Lo, I mean D'Lo's a bit weird of a player, but I feel like if it clicks, if they flesh together, I feel like they could be really good just because of the talent they have, and yeah.
I think the big thing to watch is Finch's development on the team. I think this is one of the teams where a new coach setting a new culture is really going to change the outlook. I think Finch has the potential to do that, which is why he's one of my wild card coaches of the year. Wild card, I think he's kind of a distant pick, but still something to consider. But yeah, the Timberwolves, I think Kushaal and I are teams that are definitely going to be teams that we both watch and hope for improvement. And after that, I actually have the Pelicans. I don't know.
Yeah, I have the Pelicans 10th.
Yeah, I have the Pelicans 10th too.
Yeah, I mean, they lost Zoe, but Zion.
I think he's going to take it. And he's a decent enough player to maybe make up for Lonzo's loss.
But, you guys think we should move on to the East? We continue.
I think we should just finish up the West for today.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think, the Pelicans, looking at Willie Green as a coach as well, I think would be an interesting look. But the Pelicans as an organization, I think Zion, it's just inevitable that Zion leaves. And it's going to be the same thing with Anthony Davis. They haven't really put enough pieces around him. I don't really see how they can put more pieces around him. And I think maybe the influence of a new coaching culture would be really good for the team. But other than that, I don't really see them having super huge future. Just I see Zion becoming that superstar. But other than that, I don't really know what the direction of the team is going in. You introduced Valanciunas, which I don't think is a really good fit next to Zion, to be honest. I think someone who they should have targeted is actually Chris Boucher. I think that would have been a nice fit next to Zion. But Valanciunas, I'm not really sure about. I think he's a good player. I don't really know the direction of the team. That's all. And I think that they're going to be kind of in this lower play-in kind of seeding for a while. And
I could see Zion like scraping the playoffs by winning the play-in, but that's like the furthest I'd see them.
Yeah, I could see that. Then after that, I have this kind of the more lottery teams, but I have the Spurs, and after that, I have the 3 lottery teams.
I have the Kings as after.
Oh yeah, I guess I could. The thing is with the Spurs, I think the Spurs finished higher than the Kings last season. Did they? Actually, no. I think it was.
Yeah. I'm high on the Kings because they're my second favorite team. And I always think Fox is just gonna pop off. Like, I don't know. They could. The Spurs are also, they have Pop. Wait, no, do they have Pop?
Yeah, they still have Pop, but Pop has taken a hit on the coaching end, but I still think the Spurs have some good talent with Keldon Johnson, DeJounte Murray, Derek White finally healthy. It took an interesting pick with Josh Primo that high, but I still think that that team looks good. And potentially, I can see the Kings because they have more talent being ahead of the Spurs, but I think they're kind of similar level to me, even though the Spurs don't really have that star power in that they did with Fox. But after that, I had the Rockets and Thunder kind of lottery teams. Don't really expect much from them.
Yeah. Yes.
Thunder won an unexpected amount of games with Shea healthy, so I think maybe they have that potential. But yeah, those two not really have much expectations. Probably going to be lottery again. Going to be interesting seeing Jalen Green's development. Christian Wood as well, who had a couple injury problems last season. Hopefully he's healthy. We'll see how that goes. But those two teams are just going to be in lottery again. I don't think there's any question about that. Hopefully accelerate their rebuild. I think one player to look at on the Rockets is Sengun. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but yeah, he's a really good player to look at. I think the Rockets, everyone's saying they've drafted really well, and I hope some of those players can blow up. I think they have the potential to. But end of the day, lottery team, I think that's not really debate. But yeah, so I think we've wrapped up our West rankings for now, which kind of took more time than expected. Some really good debates about Clay, the Blazers, Mavs. But I think we're going to wrap up the podcast for today, just over 30 minutes. Really good discussion. And yeah, next podcast, I think we'll be looking at the East rankings. And hopefully after that, if we have enough time, the awards, or maybe that might be a separate episode. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the first episode of the 4 Point Play podcast. We really do appreciate you listening. And hopefully you heard some good takes, maybe some controversial takes. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and goodbye.